Hey parents, let's talk about something that probably drives you crazy on a daily basis. Your little one clinging to your leg when you're trying to make dinner, crying when you leave the room for just 2 minutes, or refusing to let anyone else hold them. I know, you've probably heard from well-meaning relatives or even some parenting books that you're spoiling your child by responding to this behavior. But here's what Donald Winnicott, one of the most brilliant child psychologists of our time, wants you to understand. Ignoring clingy behavior isn't just unhelpful. It can actually be harmful to your child's development. Winnicott spent decades studying how children develop emotionally, and what he discovered will probably surprise you. That clingy behavior that feels so exhausting? It's actually a sign that your child is developing normally. In fact, it's a crucial part of their emotional growth that deserves your attention, not your resistance. Let me explain what's really happening when your child seems impossibly clingy. Winnicott taught us that children go through what he called a process of separation and individuation. Sounds fancy, right? But it's actually pretty simple. Your child is learning to become their own person while still feeling safe and secure. Think of it like learning to swim. Before a child can confidently swim across the pool, they need to know the edge is there, that they can grab onto it whenever they need to. Your presence, your availability, you are that pool edge for your child's emotional development. When your toddler follows you from room to room, they're not trying to drive you insane, though I know it can feel that way. They're actually practicing something incredibly important. They're learning that even when you disappear from sight, you still exist and you'll come back. This is what psychologists call object permanence, and it's a big deal for little minds. But more than that, they're learning to trust that their secure base, which is you, will be there when they need it. Winnicott had this beautiful concept he called the holding environment. Now, he wasn't just talking about physically holding your child, though that's part of it. He was talking about creating an emotional space where your child feels completely safe to be themselves, to feel their feelings, and to gradually learn to manage those feelings. When your child is going through a clingy phase, they're actually asking you to strengthen that holding environment. They're saying, and the only way they know how, I need to feel really, really sure that you're here before I can feel brave enough to explore the world on my own. Here's where a lot of parents get confused. And honestly, I don't blame you. We live in a culture that's obsessed with independence. We want our kids to be self-reliant, confident, able to handle themselves. These are good things. But Winnicott discovered something that might seem backwards at first. The children who become most truly independent are the ones who are allowed to be completely dependent first. It's like that old saying, you have to learn the rules before you can break them. Well, children have to learn what security feels like before they can feel confident exploring insecurity. Think about it this way. Imagine you're in a foreign country where you don't speak the language. You'd probably stick pretty close to someone who could help you navigate, right? You wouldn't wander off on your own until you felt more confident about the environment. That's exactly what your child is doing. The world is huge and confusing and sometimes scary. You are their translator, their guide, their safe person. Of course, they want to stick close to you while they're figuring everything out. But here's what happens when we misunderstand clingy behavior and try to force independence too early. Winnicott warned that children who are pushed away when they're seeking security often become more clingy, not less. It's like if someone kept moving that pool edge further away just as you were learning to swim. You'd probably panic and grab on even tighter, right? That's what children do when their need for security is dismissed or ignored. Now, I want to be really clear about something. Responding to your child's need for closeness doesn't mean you become a helicopter parent or that you never set any boundaries. Winnicott was big on what he called good enough parenting. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to anticipate every need or prevent every moment of distress. But you do need to be emotionally available and responsive most of the time. So, what does this look like in real life? Let's say your 3-year-old is going through a phase where they won't let you go to the bathroom alone. Instead of getting frustrated and insisting they stay outside, you might say something like, "Okay, you can come with me, but let's talk about what's making you feel like you need to be so close to mommy right now." You're acknowledging their need, while also gently exploring what might be driving it. Or maybe your child is having a hard time when you drop them off at daycare. Instead of just rushing out to avoid the tears, Winnicott would suggest taking a few extra minutes to help them settle in. Maybe you read a book together, help them start an activity, or create a little goodbye ritual. You're not avoiding the separation, you're supporting them through it. Here's something else Winnicott observed that I think will really help you understand what's happening. Children go through phases of what he called regression. This means they might seem to go backwards in their development for a while. A child who was sleeping through the night might start waking up again. A child who was happy to play independently might suddenly need you nearby constantly. This isn't a sign that something's wrong or that you've done something to mess up their progress. It's actually a normal part of development. Think of it like this. Sometimes when we're learning something new or going through a big change, we need to go back to basics for a while. Maybe you're learning a new job, and even though you're normally super confident, you find yourself double-checking everything and asking lots of questions. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You're making sure you have a solid foundation before you move forward. Children do the same thing emotionally. Winnicott noticed that children often become more clingy right before they make a big developmental leap. So that phase where your 18-month-old won't let you out of their sight might actually be preparing them for a big jump in independence. It's like they're filling up their emotional tank before they venture further from home base. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This all sounds nice in theory, but what about the practical reality? What about when you need to work, when you have other children who need attention, when you're just exhausted and touched out and need 5 minutes to yourself? Winnicott understood this too. He never suggested that parents should sacrifice their own well-being for their children. In fact, he believed that children need parents who are real people with real needs and real limits. The key is communication and creativity. You can acknowledge your child's need for closeness while also taking care of yourself. You might say something like, "I can see you really need to be close to me right now, and that's okay. Mommy needs to take a shower, so let's figure out how to make that work." Maybe you bring some toys into the bathroom. Maybe you sing songs so they can hear your voice. Maybe you make it a game. The point is, you're not dismissing their emotional need, but you're also not sacrificing your own basic needs. Winnicott also talked about something called optimal frustration. This means that it's actually good for children to experience some disappointment and frustration, as long as it's not overwhelming and as long as they have support to work through it. So if your child wants you to carry them everywhere and that's just not practical, you can say something like, "I know you want me to carry you, and sometimes I can do that, but right now I need you to walk beside me. Let's hold hands instead." You're setting a boundary, but you're doing it with empathy, and you're offering an alternative that still meets some of their need for connection. Here's another important point that Winnicott made. Children are incredibly good at sensing when their parents are genuinely present versus when they're physically there, but emotionally absent. You know those moments when you're sitting with your child, but you're scrolling through your phone or thinking about your to-do list? Kids pick up on that. Sometimes, what looks like excessive clinginess is actually a child's attempt to get their parents' full attention. This doesn't mean you need to be entertaining your child every moment, or that you can't have your own thoughts and feelings. But it does mean that when your child is going through a clingy phase, It might help to offer some periods of really focused, present attention. Even 10 or 15 minutes of undivided attention can sometimes fill up a child's emotional cup enough that they feel secure enough to play independently for a while. Winnicott had this wonderful way of thinking about child development as a dance between togetherness and separateness. Your child moves closer to you when they need security, and then they move away when they feel ready to explore. Your job isn't to control this dance or to rush it along. Your job is to be a reliable dance partner, available when they move toward you, supportive when they move away. One of the most beautiful things Winnicott taught us is that this early experience of having their dependency needs met actually teaches children how to be alone. I know that sounds contradictory, but think about it. When a child knows, deep in their bones, that support and comfort are available when they need it, they feel brave enough to venture out on their own. They develop what Winnicott called the capacity to be alone. This isn't just about being able to play by themselves for a few minutes. It's about developing an inner sense of security that stays with them throughout their lives. So the next time your child is going through a particularly clingy phase, try to remember that they're not trying to manipulate you or test your limits. They're not being spoiled or overly dependent. They're actually doing some of the most important emotional work of their lives. They're learning to trust, to feel secure, and ultimately to become confidently independent. This doesn't mean it's not exhausting. It doesn't mean you won't sometimes feel overwhelmed or frustrated. Winnicott understood that parenting is hard work, and he never suggested that meeting your child's emotional needs would be easy. But he did believe that understanding what's really happening can make it feel less personal and more manageable. Remember, your child's clinginess is temporary. It's a phase, not a permanent personality trait. Children who have their dependency needs met early on typically become more secure and independent as they grow, not less. You're not creating a clingy child by responding to their need for closeness. You're creating a secure child who will eventually feel confident enough to explore the world on their own terms. The next time someone tells you that you're spoiling your child by responding to their clingy behavior, you can share what Winnicott knew. Meeting a child's emotional needs isn't spoiling them. It's helping them develop the inner resources they'll need to navigate life with confidence and resilience. And that's one of the greatest gifts you can give your child.